Now we are going to be engaged. It's a decade of enlightenment that has started. We will continue to engage every sector of Gambian society. So that is what happened in Europe. So when they suffered the crisis, labor movements developed. They became parties. They start to fight for the right of the working class. They began to develop social welfare systems where they will be able to tax corporate bodies in order to provide social welfare, old age pension, disability compensations, all forms of compensations. Unemployed citizens also given work. So this is what happened in vast part of Europe because of their external market. That's how they managed to survive. For us, when you are not employed, who gives you unemployment use? It's not there. Extended family is what is helping the society to exist. There's no social welfare. So in essence then, we are asking the question, what type of system is appropriate for the Gambia? That's the question before us. And for Pdois, we look at all the family farms in the country. We look at the herds persons in the country, the vegetable gardeners, the fruit producers. We look at the ocean and its fish. We see natural resources everywhere. How do you put the people to work? Some of them will say, well, let's train the young so that they can acquire skills, entrepreneurial skills. Yes, give them the skills. Then what do they do afterwards? We are saying it's a fundamental law of economics that without ownership of the means of production, you will not be able to earn an income unless you are employed. There can be no self-employment without ownership of the means of production. Don't fool the young. Don't put them to sleep. Don't make them dream dreams that cannot be turned into reality. And that is what the agenda is in the world today. Every youth, be prepared to be an entrepreneur, but you will never own the means of production to be one. Pdois says that we must put that to an end. How are we to put it to an end? Let us give you example, and then we'll tell you the Pdois program. In the 1970s, when GPMB was a public enterprise, it had over $100 million invested in reserves outside. 100 million in the 70s. Now, what the Chinese are doing, a good example, they have been in the Gambia before even the current situation. They built the State House, they built the Supreme Court building, and many other buildings in the country. It was a Chinese state construction company. They'll give the government loan, build the facility, and the government will continue paying in foreign exchange. They put it in an English bank, US bank, or buy the bonds, and then start to earn an income. Which means that income, that interest, will generate more foreign exchange for them. So their foreign reserves will expand. And they will bring that foreign reserves to invest in the productive base of their economies. 100 million GPMB. Can you imagine at that material time, rather than a Gambia Commercial and Development Bank giving loans to a cooperative union at interest, you give it to the farmer at interest, come and buy the crop of the farmer at interest. How will the farmer be free from poverty? Double exploitation. Exploited when you take a loan to produce, exploit it when you are selling your crop. Eventually, the cooperative union had to collapse. If my memory serves me right, and don't quote me on that, but I know that it cannot be more than that, about $48 was left in its account. And they had to call the Macaulay Commission to find out how it collapsed, with huge debt in the millions to the Gambia Commercial and Development Bank. We are saying, if you had established a cooperative bank, because this is public money, came from the farmers, you put a cooperative bank, give the farmer fertilizer, seed, farming implement. They produce at a larger scale. And the cooperative bank will not charge interest. It will only charge service charges. Service charges, considering inflation and all the other factors. Movement of goods, everything, service charges. The farming income will increase. And the cooperative bank will lose nothing. That is what we are proposing. That is the Pdois agenda, to eradicate poverty in the farming community. We are saying, and GONGA says it, you will see what is written. 2014, 1.7 billion importation of rice. 2015, 1.5 billion. 2016, about 1.9 billion. 2017, 2.4 billion, and it goes on and on. 2 billion. And 2018, 2.4 billion. All this is rice being imported. You organize the farming community, they could have produced all that rice. Billions would have stayed with the farming community. To thresh the rice, you have appropriate technology, milling facilities, and you have cooperative ownership of that. Then the young entrepreneurs are coming. They will own in corporation. And then they trash that, earn an income from that. And you have those who are selling all over on the ground. Rather than on the ground, the cooperative will come and address that problem. A whole area well planned. Look at our towns. You just get up one day, or these women, they are blocking the street, we must remove them. Yes, you remove them. Like stones, and dump them anywhere you wish. How will they live? Rather, we are talking about a Ministry of Rural and Urban Development that will guide all our councils to engage in spatial planning. You will know where residents will be, where markets will be, where hospitals will be, where recreational facilities, where people can sit and rest, sidewalks, proper drainage. And then the marketing facilities you go throughout Europe. They used to have big markets before, then weekly markets, and now grocery stores. That bank could assess all those people who want to engage in selling to have their kiosk. If it is something that requires saving, because of refrigeration, you'll provide the refrigeration. And from the mills, they come to those who will sell directly to the consumers. You've created a chain of producers, processors, and marketeers, and consumers. That is what Pdois is proposing. How many thousands of people will be engaged in such an enterprise? We are saying that not only that, you must see the development that is necessary in a village. Today, you will hear people, even tell Pdois, if you want to be at the helm, you must go to this village and dig this borehole. We heard that this party is digging a borehole there. They are really engaged in development. And Gambians are saying this in the 21st century, that the politician must go and fill his pocket with money and come and dig a well to be given a nation. You are not asking the question why that village cannot produce its own water services. You go to a village, they've been existing for centuries. You will not see any village treasury. The villages have never had a source of income. And the human being needs individual income and social income. Individual consumption and social consumption. Because we need hospitals, that's social income. If we don't have something that will build that, how will we have the hospital? So we are saying that all the villages, as you have family farms, you will have village farms. If they are close to water, they can have aquaculture, anything. If they are in a mining area, they will have shares from the mines. If you put any lamp pole or any facility that will require you to earn an income, you will pay them their royalty. If you dig borehole to provide supply of water to sell, you will pay them royalty. So we are saying the village will have an income and will plan its income annually to provide its services. And then the central government will come and give an input. 100 million as an example for GPMB in the 1970s, 1977, 78. How many public corporations at that time, NTCs, all forms of public corporation. And we could have done more prospecting, as we are now seeing Batokunku Sanyang, they are mining sand minerals for years without anybody knowing how much is coming from it. That is public property. You need a company, a mining company of the state, that will negotiate with those with the equipment and make sure that the state has a majority share. Or from what it earns, it continues to buy until it has majority share. That's how you plan. And that would have been sovereign national wealth. You look at our ocean. Vessels come, take our fish and disappear. And we say we have a national navy. What about a fishing fleet? If you can have a navy to go and supervise what happens in our waters. What are our fishing fleet? You can own a navy fleet, but you cannot own a fishing fleet. Does that make sense? So in that sense, it would have been very significant to, yes, guide me properly. So in that sense, we are actually emphasizing that the central government needs to be an earner of income, not only a tax collector. And it can engage in links with private companies where it does not have the wherewithal. Like, for example, we discover oil. Yes, you can, but make sure that you come to closer to majority share, or you find how to move towards that trajectory. So in that sense, then we are saying, yes, that state owning sovereign national wealth will use that wealth to be able to build hospitals, schools, roads, infrastructure, all sorts of development that need to take place in that state. And I will give you a clear example. You can see Norway. Nigeria is there with its huge oil reserves. Angola is there, huge oil reserves. Many countries, oil reserves. But look at the people. But look at Norway, a population of 5.4 million. They use their oil and turn it into sovereign national wealth. And the state will invest in all sorts of cooperation outside. The Microsoft that you are hearing, all these companies you are hearing, if you go and check Norway's share, you will see Norway having a large share in all those companies. And that's what the Chinese are doing. And now the sovereign national wealth of Norway has reached $1 trillion. $1 trillion. And it is estimated that if you share it, every Norwegian will have $190-something thousand as property. Countries have to be planned. Development must come through knowledge, not through trial and error, not through experimentation. So in short then, I'm asked to move further and faster because what I'm saying, most of it you will read. So in sense, in terms of the economic pillar, we are saying there is a private sector which exchanges in monetary terms foreign exchange equivalent of $1.6 million annually in foreign exchange. But when it comes to the productive base, it has assets in terms of the banking system of only $22 billion. External asset, $9 billion. How much are they giving the productive sector of the private sector? It must be very little because they can only pay $1 billion worth of tax. So there's a very small sector. But $1.6 billion is circulating. Where is it going? Outside. Circulate and goes. Something must be done to help the private sector to be productive, to generate employment, pay a tax. That is part of Pdois' plan. It's not to eradicate a private sector, but to make it a corporate partner so that it can carry out its corporate social responsibility. That is what we are saying, and to create an environment that makes that possible. We are saying that remittances coming into the Gambia goes to over $5 billion in 2018, estimated to go to over $6 billion in 2019. So we are saying Gambians abroad should be properly guided so that they will be able to invest what they have in the productive base of the economy. And this can go larger afield in helping them to develop greater cooperation with other African countries so that they can build large establishments. But we'll be coming to these issues more and more in subsequent debates. So we need to have not only the private sector, we are saying the leading factor is the cooperative sector, because this is where the vast majority of people could be helped to eradicate poverty, as we have said. That those in farming, those in fruit production, milk production, oil production, all the areas, because we need import substitution. We need import substitution because GONGA has told you that our deficit in 2017 was over 24 billion. In 2019, estimated to be, in 2018, over 31 billion. That is just deficit. All the facts are there in the GONGA. You read it. From 2014 to 2018. You see deficit after deficit, 11 billion, 12 billion. Now reaching 31 billion. And most of the things that we are importing, we can produce: oil, milk. So it shows that if we engage in import substitution, the processing will be done by our own people, using appropriate technology, and that is how income can be earned, and that's how our economy could free our people from poverty. This is the Pdois model. We call it the cooperative model. We've shown that the central government must also own sovereign national wealth, our minerals, any oil we may have, or the natural resources. We can produce all the plates that we have in the country, all the pottery we need, because we have the mineral. So in that sense, we are saying the informal sector, which is a smaller sector, will also have, yeah, how much time? So therefore, we've seen that dimension, and I will just leave you to read GONGA to see the rich content. It goes into the political pillar. And as we said, we'll go into the universities and analyze all this. The political pillar is saying that each of us is sovereign. How are we going to run the Gambia? We must have cooperative sovereignty. And cooperative sovereignty means that all Gambians, irrespective of your language grouping, irrespective of your religion, your gender, we are all equal in sovereignty, and we should be one. There is no minority in the Gambia. You go to America, you hear about minority. Go to France, hear about minority on the basis of religion, because they are yet to reach that mindset of being a republic. Pdois wants to jump further. That's why we call it the leap forward. For you in mindset to know that being sovereign means we are equal. Because you have one vote, I have one vote. What is our difference? We are equal in sovereignty. So there is no minority. We have to protect the rights of all. So therefore, politically, we are talking for a state where there will be gender parity in all the institutions. Cabinet, we have started that in our party, that all the positions in central committee, etc., we have 30%, more than 30%. And that should increase to be gender parity. And we stand for that in all parts of the Constitution. We've said that the youths are being disadvantaged because 0 to 29 constitute what you call the youth population, because if you are 0 to 29, you cannot be a president of the republic, because you have to be 30 years to be president. So we consider that category to be deprived under the current circumstances. So they must be given more and more enlightenment to prepare themselves for executive leadership. And they must challenge all those who come before them to know exactly how they are going to build a country. So politically then, we are talking about a state which will eradicate all forms of monarchy. The 50%, you must have more than 50% to be able to be a president of the republic, otherwise you go to second round. All that is part of the recommendation that is in GONGA that Pdois is making. That when you are president, all gifts belong to the state and must go directly to institutions of the state for distribution, if it needs distribution, or for use on behalf of the people. So many, many recommendations are there that through question and answers maybe we'll be able to deliver on. So in terms of civil rights, we're saying that all your rights are inherent. Rights, freedom of expression, religion. You hear people quarreling about religion here and there, which is the right religion, which is the wrong religion, and fighting over it. The Constitution says that every Gambian has a right to a belief and to a practice, and no one should interfere with that right. And Pdois is out to conserve that everybody's religious right, that freedom must be guaranteed and safeguarded and must not be interfered with. The same thing with freedom of expression, association. Where are the unions? So Pdois is saying that those unions will constitute the eyes, mouth, and ears of government. Because what they say, what they see, What they recommend is what government will use for policy. What the Women Association, Youth Association, all associations will be meeting to make a recommendation. So that when we say May Day, it's a day for all unions to meet, to examine their conditions, to make recommendation, not sports day. So we are saying that civil society must become also the watchdog of society. That priests, imams, heads of major organizations, institutions, all will be civil rights commissioners who will be free to visit prisons, etc., wherever they hear that wrongdoing is being done, to ensure that the rights of people are protected. We go quickly to social rights. We're talking about the education system. That mothers go to work, fathers go to work, and they have babies. Therefore, there must be creches all workplaces, where after your maternal leave, paternal leave, you'll be able to have the children well protected. Early childhood centers everywhere. 10-year education. And that education, early childhood education, the child will be taught to read and write in one's language. And all the languages will be written. And at that early age, you will learn to do so. And move into the first grade up to 10. You'll be prepared to understand nature and society, and also to engage in practice, to be able to learn practical work. You'll be instructed in one area of industry so that you'll be able to have the skills. That will be ingrained in the school system. That when you finish 10th grade, now you'll go into national service, where you choose your area of work and you will go and work, and at least you will be fed during that period. The state will be responsible for your feeding during that period so that you go into national service. Those who will enter into job will go into the job market. Those who wish to go into further training in the tertiary institute will continue. That is the type of organized society that Pdois intends to create. We are talking about culture, house of culture everywhere. Culture is a way of life. The songs, the music, the writings, the poems, the theaters. Where are the theater halls? You have to rent or get assistance from those who rent to have sympathy for you and assist you. Otherwise, you will not be able to have meetings of this nature. But there should be community halls everywhere, where fathers, mothers can meet, talk about marriage, children, everything. Televisions there so that those can go and watch. This is what we're talking about. A culture where people be in charge. The environment must not be destroyed. We'll be able to train people to have understanding of the environment. That its destruction is our destruction. You can have preventive health through that, by further understanding. So in short, we're also talking about an international relation where we call cooperative sovereignty of states. That all states are equal, but we can work together to create African unity based on the needs of our people. Because today Africa is suffering, and Nkrumah told them, and that's my conclusion, that individual African countries had small economies, and they were competing with larger economies which had centuries of experience and centuries of accumulation of wealth. That they needed to come together, just as Europe had to come together after the Second World War, to have a European economic recovery program. They wanted to develop agriculture, develop industry, made sure that they created energy and generated employment. They promoted inter-European trade. That's why they established the IMF and the World Bank, International Bank for Reconstruction and Development. Countries that needed money will get money from the International Bank. And if you trade and you have a deficit, then the IMF will assist you to be able to import, but the International Development Bank, International Bank for Reconstruction and Development will assist you to be able to expand your production, to at least deal with your deficit. That's how Europe is what it is today. It's mutual support. That's what Africa needed to do. Create an African Central Bank, an African Monetary Fund, an African Investment Bank. Come together, build up the oil resources of Nigeria, Angola, all these countries. Then we would have created all these funds which will help individual countries to develop in their areas of competence. That's what you call economics of scale. And that is what Pdois is talking about, that let us inject this in all African countries to see that if we combine and come together, we can become a mighty force, not to rule the world, but to teach the world how might can go with justice, how might can go with cooperation, how might can be people-centered. And that is what the world is missing. That's why we are suffering. Thank you very much.
Where we move away from idealism to realism. So we are now declaring the floor open and allow questions to come from the floor and ask for whatever you think is not clear to you, so that the engagement will continue. Whoever has a question or has a counter proposal or does not agree with certain things, the floor is open. Thank you. Mbokk yi waxtaan bi mun naa njëlbeenu waxtaan bi jeex na léegi dañoo ubbi bunta bi pour képp ki nga xam ne am na li nga xam ne leeru ko te bëgg na mu leer si moom mun na koo laajte si làkk bi mun a laajte su fekkee ne tamit dafa am pexe bi mu am bi nga xam ne moom la yaakaar ne foofu la réew mi war a jaar pour réew mi naat ñu nekk si suñ jàmm ñu nekk si suñ coobare boppa boobu it mun na koo mbaadi ngoolu kaccaa foloo a dande janni silambe kaccaa murundi laal kan kaatu ñimmu ñoo maako yooleti kunto ɓeen nakkala mutoro yela faa woto mbe min fo kan wala mu ñinti ko moomo ye ñininkaaro soto walla moomo ye miirari kendo soto banko ñante tamandi la ñaami walla munne ñante kela pour banko digo safan soto banko fanan soto banko ti banko mi ya lon ko abe kala banko ti mi ya fan soto le microphone di la mun al yalla ni ka musidɓe ɗo woni ɗo de yewtere aranere nden huuɓi yewtere hedde tinɗen ko ɗum woni ono wonɓe ɗo meɗen tottude on maak on fiyu on lando kala ko andu awa on jaara
Je ne sais pas si je peux parler en français. C'est possible ou c'est pas possible? Merci beaucoup. Je m'appelle Pdois Sissoko. Je suis le coordinateur des organisations de réfugiés mauritaniens au Sénégal. Je ne peux pas commencer sans remercier les organisateurs que j'ai eu la chance de connaître depuis 1995, où en ce moment, les droits de l'homme, la Commission africaine des droits de l'homme commençait à prendre de l'ampleur. Et donc, je vous remercie infiniment parce que votre organisation, votre parti, votre structure nous a beaucoup aidés durant cette période extrêmement difficile, après les fameux événements que vous connaissez, qu'on appelle les événements Sénégal-Mauritanie. Mais je ne reviens pas là-dessus. Je pense que l'histoire retiendra que vous avez beaucoup fait. Ma première question, GONGA. Pourquoi ce titre? Et qu'est-ce que vous voulez insinuer en utilisant les langues nationales? Parce que votre journal s'appelle Soraya. Maintenant, il y a une autre rubrique qui s'appelle GONGA. Et peut-être qu'il y a d'autres choses qui vont venir. Je voudrais savoir pourquoi. La deuxième chose, l'Afrique, selon le professeur Cheikh Anta Diop, et à son âme, il a dit que c'est le berceau de l'humanité. Mais malheureusement, et le professeur Khalifa l'a montré, actuellement l'Afrique est le berceau des malheurs. avec toutes les ressources que nous avons, nos populations sont en train de souffrir. Mais je voudrais revenir seulement à un élément que vous avez commencé à parler, qui est sur l'énergie, le pétrole, le gaz. Tous les pays, même à côté du Sénégal, ça commence à faire des problèmes. Quelles sont les dispositions ou les idées que vous avez, vous, en tant que parti qui prenez le pouvoir, vous allez faire pour que ça, au lieu que ce soit un malheur, ça soit un bonheur pour le peuple gambien? La troisième et dernière chose que je voudrais que vous parliez un peu, c'est les relations internationales. Vous n'en avez pas beaucoup parlé. C'est très important pour un petit pays, si on doit le dire par rapport à sa taille et sa population, mais un grand pays par rapport à son histoire, sa dignité, son intention de s'élever par rapport au continent africain. Qu'est-ce que vous préconisez au niveau des relations internationales si votre parti prend le pouvoir? Je vous remercie.
I think all of you have heard him speak in French. I'll just explain certain things as an answer, and Celia will answer him in French. It is important that we see that he is in Senegal, but is leading a refugee organization and is here because of a human rights conference that is here, and chose to attend the program. He is wondering in terms of the magazine and how we see our national languages. I think you've heard from what I've said that in fact from early childhood, reading and writing will be mandated for the children in the languages of the country. And what we are trying to do for a year is one language. Another, GONGA is another language. We are planning to have theater groups, they will be named another language. So at the end of the day, we'll have all the languages in the Gambia represented in one area of operation or activity or the order of the party. I'm sure if we move, it's just we are trying to save time. Otherwise, you will hear people speaking Jola, in Manjango, in all the other languages, as we usually do. But in conferences like this, we are conscious of time. Now, what he is emphasizing also is the situation of resources. Oil is one example. Senegal has even discovered oil. What is the plan for it? You've hardly mentioned oil. And they have their sovereign national law, protected by the country for the interest of the people. That is what must be done. In terms of international relations, we've seen that the unity of Africa is fundamentally our objective. He is asking about it. Mbokk mi li nga laajte am na solo suma naataango dina la tontu ci làkk bi nga làkk waaye li nga laajte lu am solo li ñoo jéem fi mu nekk ni mooy ñu doon suñu bopp wante itam bokk ci réew buñ toog ba gis ne suñu bopp dafa xaajaaloo ci wàllu xeet moo tax ñu ne suñu xale yi ñoo njëkk jàng balaa ñoo dugg ci daara yu ñuy war a jàngee et dañoo njëkk jàng ci suñu làkk yi di bind ci suñu làkk di ko mun a jàng di ko mun a bind su ko defee fa ñoo duggee ji ci daara yi gën a mag dina fekk mu mel ni fa ñoo doonee benn suñ demee bi da am daal ñetti at ba ñëw ba ci juróomi at te dinañ leen jàngal façon ngi jàng yi ñoo xam ne seen làkk réew mi ak mun koo bind mun koo jàng loolu dina bokk ci suñu doxalin jàng ñuy wane nag ne soo gisee ñu jël làkk réew mi di ko def ci li nga xam ne suñu bunti doxalin yi la ni bunti xibaar yi ñu ne Foroyaa te Foroyaa mooy ngor gore ñu ne bii ñu ko ooyee gonga mooy dëgg soo gisee ñu ngay jël suñu làkki réew mi di ko dugalaat ci ñun suñu doxalin di parti bi lii yëpp ndax ñu gën a gis suñu bopp fonk suñu bopp ñu ne nag ci wàllu koom-koom li nga ci wax mooy ne dëgg la gis nañu diw ci Sénégal Nigeria ci Angola ñu yàgg nañu ci ñu ne moo tax ñun dañu ne alal ji jógee ci ron suuf alal ji nekk ci jaww ji mel ni tàngoor bi jógee ci naaj alal ji nga xam ne moo nekk ci suñu géej gi ñu ne lii nit ñee ko moom kon nag balaa ñu koo jël di ko jëriñoo dañ ci war a waxtaan bi am ci dogalin te ñun dogalin bi nga xam ne mën ma ci wax mooy ne suñ boo jëflante ak yeneen doomi yi kenn waruñoo ëppale ca alal jooju te alal jooju nag boo dugal ci kees boo xam ne kii dafa delluwaat suñu nit su fekkee ne béykat bu la di nga am banque coopérative boo xam ne dina jox béykat engrais jiwu machine te banque coopérative bi du mel ni banque yi nga xam ne dañoo coopérative banque coopérative bi li moo laaj rek béykat bi gannaaw bu mu laajtee lañ ko jox mooy li nga xam ne ñooy liggéey lañ leen war a fi pour mu te yooyu doxal li nga xam ne itam xëy na njëkk yi gën nañuy yokk mu mel ni loolu nag dañoo jël tegaat ko ci li nga xam ne moom la béykat bi di delloowaat nguur boobu kees boobu ñu ne loolu lañ yaakaaree muy béykat bi mooy ñi nga xam ne dañ bëgg a am facteurs yu ndaw yoo xam ne dinañu am jumtuwaay yu emoo pour mun a jël suñu maalo bi di ko bàccaa ñooñu itam dinañ leen defal coopérative jaaykat yi ñu defal leen coopérative ñu ne banque boobu nga xam ne foofu la ñoo dugal alal réew mi moom la ñoo samp bu ndax dañu loolu bokk na ci suñu dox ñu ne nag jëflante ak yeneen réew li ci gën a jiitu mooy suufi Afrique yi mun a ànd ndax Europe ba mu tasee dañ booloo waat lañ booloo mooy dañu gis ne war nañu am banque bu mag bu leen a dimbale ci koom-koom banque bunte bu mag itam boo xam ne du ci lebante di abalante di jëndante ne loolu yëpp ñu am ñaari bunte yooyu ñu dimbale mu mel ni réew sooy jëflante ci jëndante ak jaayante ak beneen réew yéenay da ngaa daanu moo tax ñu ubboon bunte boo xam ne bii mooy dimbale ki daanu mu am xaalis pour jënd waaye beneen bunte boo xam ne te daanu itam dina ñëw dimbale ko ndax mu mun a gën a liggéey ndax mu daanoo ci ñu ne Afrique dafa war a jaar ci bunte boobu suñ bëggee génn ci coono ga ñu ne loolu lañ mën a fexe pour jëflante àddina bi ndax ñu naw waaw moom dina waxtaan ak yow ngeen koo leeral ci.
Je pense que mon collègue a essentiellement répondu à vos questions, mais je vous proposerai qu'on ait une suivi à cet événement. À deux, on aura une discussion. Et actuellement, on a perdu beaucoup de temps, mais je pense que ça serait mieux peut-être 2 à 2 pour continuer la discussion sur les questions que vous avez posées. En tout cas, je vous remercie très bien. Pour répondre à une question qui m'est très chère, vous avez posé la question sur les langues. Pourquoi GONGA? On a choisi GONGA parce que GONGA est une langue gambienne, est une langue sénégalaise, est une langue ouest-africaine. Et la politique linguistique de notre parti consiste à dire que la libération africaine sans la libération linguistique n'aura aucun sens. Donc, il faut qu'on passe par la libération linguistique pour que la représentation au niveau de nos assemblées ait un sens. Vous vous imaginez un député sénégalais, un député gambien, quand il va à l'Assemblée, il parle le français, il parle l'anglais. Et les électeurs n'ont aucune idée. Donc, ça n'a aucun sens d'être élu et représenter des gens en parlant français ou anglais, des gens qui ne comprennent aucun sens de cela. Donc, c'est pourquoi notre politique linguistique consisterait éventuellement à enseigner les langues à tous les niveaux pour que cette libération linguistique dont je viens de parler ait un sens. Merci bien. Je pense que vous n'allez pas partir aujourd'hui. on peut continuer la discussion sur les questions que vous avez posées après ce terminal. Merci. Donc, s'il y a d'autres questions, if you have other questions to ask.
Yes, indeed a great day for Gambian politics, for Gambian policy making. Because I have always averred that there is no serious thinking going on in this country for the past 50 years on the part of the government in terms of what clear policies should run this country. For once, I have heard alternative, fresh, creative thinking, and I am impressed, even though I have questions. But the problem is, even the forums we roll out in the country by the government, when we roll them out, they are funded by foreign money. And as the saying goes, he who pays the piper calls the tune. So I've heard about sovereign cooperative arrangements, and I think it's a possible solution. I'm not saying it's perfect, and that's why I'm going to ask my question. But I know, for instance, the National Development Plan of this government, it was no fresh thinking. It's the thinking of Bretton Woods institutions and the UN. And that's why from day one I said it's not going to work, and the evidence is out there. And that's why when they announced it's going to come. So this is the kind of alternative fresh thinking we need. And I am glad Honorable Khalifa Saleh mentioned Norway, because I think we've leaning too much on this Western Eurocentric model, and there are alternative models that have worked in other countries. So I don't know why we should have this kind of straitjacket thinking. Having said that, we know we are operating under the yokes of IMF, World Bank, and we cannot say simplistically that the government does that because they want to do it. We know we've borrowed beyond reasonable limits, and that's why we don't have all the leeway to operate our own policies. IMF and World Bank, they're going to come and tell you what to do because you owe them. And also, they have an economic philosophy that's counter to what Pdois is presenting here. My question is, Pdois, knowing the realities on the ground that we owe these people, we are not all that free. How are you going to deal with the international economic system if you have the opportunity to roll out the policies you've spelled out here? Thank you for the opportunity to ask this question.
By 2060, we will not be importing rice. And at that time, we were importing 200,000 tons. And the declaration in 2014 that in 2 years we will not be importing rice had to be interrogated by us. We saw that in 2015 we produced 57,000 tons and had to import the rest. And the amount, I've already stated, 1.7 billion. The Bretton Woods institutions did not tell government not to sit down and plan how to produce rice. What happened first step was given $28 million. GCAP, $19 million. And first step, $84 million. So essentially, you're talking about over $5 billion given to Gambia that should go into the agricultural sector. And this 2018, we imported $2.4 billion worth of rice. And that money provided is going to the farmer. They've been back engaged in many things. That is taking money and giving it to the farmer. We, with all honesty, do not believe that we have a a problem with the world institutions. We believe the world institutions are in crisis. They are failing. They are witnessing government failing. And none of them has answers. So they are looking for answers. They are looking for guidance. I am a part of the APC EU, Pan-African, APC EU Parliamentary Assembly. We have about 107 countries represented in that assembly, from Caribbean, from every part of Europe, the whole European Union. And we are with our European parliamentarians. And the ideas I pronounce here, I pronounce there. And I see no challenge, because we deal with the facts. So our conception is that we are saying we have to eradicate that importation of rice. We can produce it. But we cannot produce it by giving all our land to the few and say, produce. How will the poor reach the rice to eat it? So we believe that type of production, even if it can generate huge sum of income, it will go to the few and will not reach the many. That is why we say that the solution is that cooperative sector. And I am convinced that we can argue our way with any institution that will be convincing to be able to proceed with that dimension. When I look at the money that is being, look at the sandmine. Which company is doing the mining? So essentially, this constitutes our choice. We give the license. You look at fishing license. Who gives the license? We give the license. And there is absolutely no doubt that as you build sovereign national wealth and inject it in foreign reserves, you build your foreign reserves to a point that ultimately you can find your way and manage your debt. We are saying you cannot manage that debt the way they are trying to manage it, by simply borrowing and borrowing and borrowing without any sovereign national wealth being generated. Because you'll have to tax and tax and tax and make your people poorer and poorer to be able to pay. And you have to also retract, roll back from health, from education, so that you'll be able to have enough to be able to pay your debts. We are saying in the long run, that is not sustainable. And in that regard, the world requires a rethinking, and we are rethinking with the world. And we believe that the world is waiting to receive new leaders from the African continent. I have no doubt about that. And even that part of the world is changing. You can see the crisis they are facing more and more. And the debate, I believe, if you look at even the Scandinavian countries, huge debate taking place. And the whole world is rethinking. That's why Pdois feels that we should move right away, even though we're not in government, but at least that rethinking exercise must start now among our citizenry. Thank you.
About the structural adjustment programs, where they injected in private sector-led development. It's because they want European and American companies to come and take over our commanding heights and all the important institutions. Do I blame them? No. But will we think as new leaders, as you said, that's the fundamental question. You mentioned EU. Together with America, they are the ones giving IFAD and all these international institutions money to send in here as project aid. EU does that because they want us to give out those fishing licenses. Do I blame them? No, it's our responsibility. Again, my question. This EU, America, that just baptizes themselves as IFAD and PWAM and all these projects, they don't like your idea. That's what I think. How are you going to deal with this? This is my question again. Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much. It teaches me that we do not see a monolithic Europe, a monolithic America, as far as governance is concerned. A period existed when it became clear that simply ownership of land and industry by a few and accumulate wealth will not necessarily lead to social justice. And consequently, the logic changes. That they must inject some cooperative measures in order to be able to generate greater income. This whole concept of self-employment is really state-driven. States do invest to facilitate such generation of employment because those people have fallen out of the formal employment structure. So Europe and America have been coping with more and more people dropping out from the formal economic structure in order to help them, cushion them for survival. And the worst state is to maintain you as an unemployed person. That is the type of state they have established. Now, in relating to us, they also learn from their experience. Fundamentally, the linkage was to our raw material production in order to do the processing and maintain their industry. They have seen that that has impoverished us and will continue to impoverish us. They wanted to cushion that before by developing many interventions. And these interventions is ultimately what led to the Lomé Conventions, for example, where if your groundnuts receive less prices in the world market, then they give you the difference to boost up production. The same thing with minerals. But they reached a stage where their own economies began to have greater demand for social services. And they started to eradicate all the support systems. And ultimately, we now have the budget supports and also project supports. Well, what leads to this is what must be fully understood. That they must quantify the amount of resources being generated from all these countries and then look at what they can tax and get from all the sources, levies, all sorts of sources of drawing income in order to provide this budget support and also project support. This is calculated from the gains that they make. The European Investment Bank does give loans for interest, but can also give grants. So they are balancing what they are doing in their economic space. What is necessary is for also the African people, our governments, to begin to balance our own space and use that balance to be able to gain leverage. This is a horse trading exercise. And there is absolutely no doubt that once we become organized in this horse trading exercise, we'll be able to gain greater leverage. That's why this negotiation is not just an individual country, it is a negotiation that must be done by a group of countries, ACP for example, or African countries for example, to be able to gain that leverage. So coming back to the basic question, even the governments in Europe are rethinking. And even though conservative wave, first it was the progressive wave. And then you saw Sweden, Norway, UK, with the Labour parties, they started to integrate more and more into developing closer relationships with Tanzania, progressive governments. And in fact, places like Sweden, they used to even invite people who had progressive thinking to their countries, assist them to even come to power. All that has happened if you follow the history. But then conservative government come and then start rolling back. But they are also running into crisis. So Europe is really not monolithic. It is changing. We need to develop our own ideas and look for our own partners and work together. in Europe itself, in their parliament. And I'm sure that you will find people who are dead against the exploitation that our countries are subjected to. I don't know whether I have touched on your question. Thank you.